Hansworm Hat. In this video, I want to explain how the phases of the moon work. Not exactly how it works, because I don't think anybody knows. I think that's how the heavens and all of this works. I think that's going to be part of the truths that get revealed. All truth shall be revealed. We'll eventually know that stuff. But I don't think it's something that anyone really has figured out. Just because somebody in a lab coat and somebody with 10 PhDs allegedly tells you that they know, that doesn't mean anything. It's a bunch of bullshit. And you really do live in a big lie. And there really are that many people that are willing to get together and lie to people to hide God. And one of the ways that they do that is the NASA Outer Space Fantasyland. And you got to break out of it. It never felt right to me. Things like gravity, when people would explain them, like that doesn't make sense. An apple just falls because it's not supported by the tree anymore, and it's more dense than air. And yeah, gravity's fake. It's just density and buoyancy, and so much more. But that's not what this video is about. I just want to teach something practical, something useful, something they don't teach in school, because they don't want you out there looking at the sun and moon and stars and actually figuring out about it. They want to fill your mind with a bunch of NASA garbage factoids with coded numbers and just huge numbers that don't exist in reality, just to have you living in a fantasy land. They want you seeing a spinning cartoon ball image or fisheye lens footage or just a bunch of cartoons, really bad ones. They want you seeing that more than reality, more than real life. They don't want you looking at the moon and really thinking about it and making your own observations. They just want you to sit back and, I don't know, even people who study the moon, they don't study practical stuff. I've taken many astronomy courses. Nobody ever taught what this video is about. So let's get into it. There's two major things you need to know. Full moon is opposite the sun in the sky, and the full moon rises after the sun sets. Think of how full the moon is a representation of how far apart the moon and the sun are in the sky. And people have brought this up. The moon is a reflection of the sun. That might be true. It very could be true that the moon is like the backside of the sun, and it's some sort of reflection. The sun is hot, the moon is cold. God is amazing. The heavens are amazing. We're all gonna, it's gonna blow our mind when we figure out the truth. And so much, it's gonna be so much cooler and better, because it'll be true, than NASA Outer Space Fantasyland, which never felt right. Anyways, the full moon is opposite the sun in the sky. The full moon rises after the sun sets. Yeah, and think of full moon because it's as far away as it can be. And that means as it gets closer, it's going to not be full anymore. And that's how the phases work. That's how the moon gets smaller or bigger, or, you know, more lit or less lit. It's a light in the sky. Okay, the next part. The moon travels more slowly than the sun. Or you can think of this the other way. The sun travels faster than the moon. And I think that this is where all of those folk tales, which this is a big aha moment when you wake up, they've been hiding the truth in plain sight the whole time. We've always had the Bible there, and the Bible's flat earth. But all of the folk tales that they tell us, they try to make it seem like a passe thing. Oh, people used to believe that the earth was flat. Oh, Native American tales about the sun eating the moon. Okay, that's way closer to reality. That's way closer to the truth than any outer space tale. And it's because that's what happens. It's like a race between the sun and the moon. As the sun catches up to the moon, it's like eating away at the moon. The moon gets less and less and less. But it's like on a circular track. The race doesn't end when the sun catches up to the moon. The sun eventually catches up to the moon and totally eats it. And right, this is like always the tale that they say for the Native American stuff. It's like the moon is being eaten by the sun. But then what happens is the race doesn't end. The sun keeps going faster. But now, since the sun has now passed the moon starts to grow again. And that's how it works. That's how the cycles work. So let's just read these things. As the sun catches up to the moon wanes. Yep. Once the sun fully catches up, you have a new moon. No moon visible. And then finally, after the sun laps the moon or passes the moon in the sky, it'll start to wax until the next full moon, until the distance between the two is as big as it can be. And now it's going to start getting smaller and it's going to start eating away again. So I just want to do some examples, starting with this is at moonrise, and you could draw these pictures for different times of day, but I just wanted to focus on the moon because this is talking about the moon. But just drawing these images, it made me think of, this is probably the whole yin yang stuff is getting at this idea. It's this balance between the moon and the sun that explains a lot of how the heavens work, and it's the time. This is how we're supposed to keep track of time. It's a way that God gave us to keep track of time and seasons. Okay, so the full moon rises after the sun sets. And so think of now a bunch of days are passing, but the sun is traveling a little bit faster through the sky. So now, as a few days have passed, the moon is rising, but the sun has set even sooner. So what would this mean? This is like the moon keeps rising later and later, and it starts to get eaten away. Like here, as the moon keeps getting eaten away, the sun is catching up to it. So when you have something like 4, like what is number 4? It's a crescent waning moon. And see, that's like a moon that it rises really late in the night. The sun is almost coming back up. And this is always how it is. If you have a waning crescent moon, it's always this type of moon. It's always a moon that's coming up really late, just before the sun comes up. And it gets smaller and smaller. So if you want to see a really small crescent moon, it's going to be very close to the sun in the sky, either in front of it or behind it. Whether it's in front of it, it's going to tell you if that would be getting smaller, a waning moon. And if the moon is behind it, it's a waxing moon. It's getting bigger. So number 6, the sun has fully caught up to the moon, and that's why you can't see it. It's been totally eaten away. And so what happens if you keep going? So this type of moon, this is a hard moon to see, number 7, but today the moon is so bright, Isaiah prophecy, it's just way easier to see the moon in general. But a small crescent that's getting bigger, waxing, you'll only see it for a brief moment after the sun has set. But then it gets bigger and bigger, and its distance gets bigger and bigger away from the sun. Until you go back to the full moon. And the cycle just keeps repeating itself. So there's just these two things. If a moon is waxing, it's getting bigger. Well, since the sun moves a little bit faster, then the moon has to be behind the sun in the sky. And it's not yet opposite the sun. If the moon is waning, well, that means that it's getting smaller. So that means that the sun has to be catching up to the moon. So the moon is in front of the sun in the sky, and the sun is catching up. And I have these two examples. If you want to pause it and give yourself a little test, see if you're following along, you could do that right now. I'm going to show the solutions really quick after I read them. A nearly full waxing moon. So just nearly full, you just know, okay, the moon is almost opposite the sun in the sky. It's waxing, so it's getting bigger. That's just the one where, I don't know, if you're not thinking too carefully about it, you can mess it up. It's waxing, so it's getting bigger. That means that the moon is lagging behind the sun, and the distance is going to get bigger. So it's not quite. I mean, I'll show you a picture. It's kind of hard to explain sometimes. A small crescent, so that means it's really close to the sun. If you have a small crescent, and it's waning, so it's like the sun is about to eat it up. In the second example, a small crescent waning moon, it must be just barely in front of the sun. Let's see if my pictures look like that. Yeah, I think that's it. And I mean, that's mostly it for the lesson. Really just observe it for yourself. It just comes from those two ideas. You have a full moon when they're totally opposite in the sky, and how full it is has to do with the distance. As it gets closer, it gets eaten up, and the sun goes faster. The sun is the faster one. Here are two Bible verses that are relevant. Genesis chapter 1, verse 14. And God said, let there be lights in the firmament of the heaven to divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs and for seasons and for days and years. NASA Outer Space Fantasyland would not work like reality works, like real life works. When you go outside and you look at the stars have never changed their course. We have the same constellations that have ever been there, and they look the exact same. There's no parallax. There is no stellar parallax, because Outer Space Fantasyland is a bunch of BS. And God gave it, it's the time, we don't need watches. There's a reason that Masons are obsessed with watches. We don't need them. God gave us everything that we need, and it's just that people live in a TV reality. Nobody goes outside. If you just walked up and asked people, hey, what phase is the moon right now? People are going to think you're crazy, unless they're into astrology or something. But that just shows you how Satan corrupts. Practically the only people out there that are interacting with God's creation correctly, knowing where the sun and the stars and the moon are, paying attention to those things, the only people doing that in 2019, practically, are satanic people that are into witchcraft. There's almost nobody out there that just loves God and they want to understand his creation, and so that's why they're going and trying to figure this stuff out, and it's because we're under a great illusion. This is the next one. 1 Corinthians chapter 1, verse 27. But God hath chosen the foolish things of the world to confound the wise, and God hath chosen the weak things of the world to confound the things which are mighty. And this just always reminds me of how I used to think I was smarty McSmartpants for spending so much time and energy studying things that aren't even real. It's embarrassing. I'm embarrassed. I really am. If NASA Outer Space Fantasyland was true, they wouldn't have to draw you a bunch of cartoons all the time. They wouldn't have to do a bunch of CGI all the time. And it doesn't make sense. Just because they draw a little figure like this doesn't mean that that's how NASA Outer Space Land would work. And it was such a relief when I finally knew that it was all fake. It was like, oh my gosh, thank goodness. It didn't make sense. It's very chaotic. That's what they love. Order out of chaos. The moon is a light in the sky. That's not a rock. They tell you that the moon is allegedly as reflective as asphalt, and it's because they're mocking you. They like to tell you those stupid stories that don't even make sense because they don't care. They'll make you believe whatever. It makes them feel more powerful the more ridiculous stuff they can make you believe. Look at that. Where's the dark part? It's optical. It's a light. It's like a rainbow. You know how rainbows are optical? Everyone gets their own rainbow. It's optical properties of the firmament. I'll show you in a second what I think this is. I think it's like a blown up image of something that's inside the firmament. I mean, like, why can't we see the dark part? It's because there's even this weird, like, see that light part on the right? How come we can see so much distance or so much, how come we can see so much detail on the moon, but we don't see any detail on a mountain in the distance? How does that work? Shouldn't a mountain be just as reflective as whatever the surface of the moon is? No, the moon is a light. The reason you can see so much detail is because you're seeing a projected image of something in the firmament. It's like a rainbow. It's going to be, and when I say that, doesn't that just totally make sense? They look the same because it's the same type of thing. It's some sort of hologram thing in the sky. They make fun of it too. They mock the truth. Oh, the moon is just a hologram. And yeah, it probably is. It's not a place you can land. It's not a rock in outer space land. Where's the detail on the mountains? So how far away really is the moon? I think it's a projected image. It's probably the same distance as a rainbow. How far away is a rainbow? This is what the moon is. Look at this. This flower petal in my microscope looks like an alien planet. I remember using microscopes and getting images like this sometimes, and it looks exactly like planets. It's probably what it is. It's some sort of optical thing. And look at how this does the same exact thing what the moon does. This is a phase. You're getting a phase of this flower petal. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. God bless everybody.